I must really hate myself. Why do I say that? Simple. I've been doing this for a little while, and you think I've already would have had it figured out, given the number of times I've done these recordings over and over again. But even a seasoned person like me, or someone that perceived to be seasoned, me with my seat, can mess shit up. Case in point, I was making a recording, or a couple recordings, and at each time, I didn't realize that there was an echo effect. Well, I thought, what was it causing it? Was it because I had multiple recording sources, like multiple devices recording audio at the same time? Was it, what was it? I couldn't figure it. I thought that was the main one. I was echo from the speakers, echo from this, echo that. It turns out, the simple fact is that I have a small semi-professional mixing board, not a terribly expensive one, which I patch my two microphones and my audio sources through. It allows me to do a few other things like digitizing stuff and that. But unfortunately, one of the things that I didn't take into account is the fact there's special effects on most of these pedals. A single button allows you to do echoes and reverbs, and you can selectively pick where the source is to have this. Unfortunately, I had this effect selected for every single one of the channels, wondering why there was echo and reverb and a lot of things was playing back, including the previous recording of this podcast. And then once I finally realized it, after much deliberation and tests, several tests, getting really frustrated, I pressed the link and did a final test, and guess what? The echo went away. No kidding. So, lo and behold, it's me again, Mike. I'm not wearing my shirt today. I'm just wearing a regular Senator's t-shirt. Of course, you're going to see it backwards on there. Actually, I got it corrected. It goes the right way. It produces the right way. It's actually showing the image on the screen perfectly fine. So you'll see my shirt. It's not simply have the reverse style. Anyway, so welcome to my channel. Anyway, so let's get back to brass tacks. What was the reason I started this recording process in the first place today? What was the main purpose of it? Okay, well, I was talking about things. I hadn't been on the channel for a while, and I know that it regulated some people as important in that in terms of overall content. People get dependent on that, rely on that. Of course, you know, it's my colleague Bugs Bunny here. Frequent viewer of the channel. He doesn't say very much. He's a very silent type, and he maybe because he's stuffed. Sorry, Bugs. I hate to say that. So anyway, I was going about this, talking about what the stuff I was talking about, and on the fact that I decided, as most people know that this channel does not tend to go too much to either political stuff, although I have done a couple times. Well, back when I was talking about the Conservative Party specifically. It doesn't go on much to covering like various news items, except occasionally I see something I think is worthy of talking about. And there's a reason for that. One is because what my political beliefs are or aren't shouldn't reflect the opinions or views I have in terms of the validity of them. They shouldn't affect my observations about life and how I think. Those are sort of external things, like the other thing are external forces in my life. And there's plenty of other people already talking about these things, and I watch some of the content maybe of these programs, and some of them I don't like, and some I do. Sometimes I like certain things about them, and some I don't. Just like any type of content there, like I said, I know some people might like my dad, and they might like some other things. I know it's a crazy world. People get to choose things. There's so much choice there. You can watch me or not watch me. I hope you do, but ultimately I can't tell you to. All I can do is hope that I say something that's relevant to you, that makes sense, that sounds like something you really want to know about, and it's interesting and compelling enough, maybe to the point of eventually writing content on the channel or comments at least on the channel. Let me know how you think about it. Anyway, so what was it? I was really talking about a couple of things. One of the things I was talking about was the fact that the way the world's working, and the fact that the concepts like, well, here's the thing. There was a slavery thing that came. It's the expression "freedom is slavery," and how that could apply to the way things are going now. I mean, the whole idea that what the words' meaning are, and how words are getting reinterpreted and being turned around by one particular group and their agenda, and why that is important, why definitions of words are important to set boundaries on, and the fact that I know that words evolve, I know words sometimes change or evolve with the meanings, but in the case when a word literally reverses its meaning from its original intent, then that makes language irrelevant. Because the fact is, we rely on these words having certain meanings that we all agree on, or a set of meanings we all agree on based on certain contexts. And we rely on those words not necessarily contradicting themselves or meaning the opposite of some of those meanings. Because then it just takes the meaning of the words entirely. I mean, you don't have a conversation where somebody says something, a certain word, and we're counting on this word to mean something, and everyone's supposed to understand the context of what this word is supposed to mean within the context of the meanings we've given a particular word to give in society. We have different meanings for the word, sure, but we never, ever encroach on the territory, taking a word and making it mean the opposite of what the one meaning is, because then it's confused. Then you just deflated the word. The word just means nothing then. It doesn't either mean it means this or it means this. It means this or it's total opposite. So we have to be very careful about that in terms of language. And the fact is, things like freedom and slavery is an example of taking a terminology in this case and defining one thing and saying it's the opposite, convoluting it with the absolute opposite. And the fact is, we basically we literally just cancels out the meaning of the sentence, because how can you have freedom and how can you have slavery could coexist with each other? How can slavery be freedom and how can freedom be slavery? War can't be peace, black can't be white, in can't be out, fire can't be ashes. It's the words. It's very important that we understand not only the meanings of words so that we can convey messages to each other, but understand the fact that words themselves don't have any meaning other than what we give it. Words don't have feelings other than we give it. And some people's feelings will be hurt when you say certain words or call them certain words in the context of society. And of course, obviously, words have changed. There's certain words that have changed from meaning one thing to also being connotate to something, in this case, something that might be something that's offensive to a specific group of people. But here's the real trick of it. This is the real catcher. This is where people don't understand the power of their own power when it comes to a word. Any word that can be offensive can be made just as inoffensive by choosing not to take offense. Because the person that's attempting to make you offended by that word knows full well that you will be offended. Is taking on the fact that they already predetermined that you are automatically determined this particular word is offensive to them, and therefore anyone uttering this word regards to them or any other group that they are associated with, or anything associated with that word, are automatically assumed to be a certain thing, and that's the way they interpret the word, and that's how they react to the word, and that's how they express their feelings about it. But the only thing you're doing by doing that is you're taking something, a word which has no ability to hurt anybody physically, ever at all. It can emote people to aspire to physical events. The people that interpret it as meaning that this is an overture to a gesture of physical violence to others, and that's unfortunate. But ultimately, the word itself does not have that power. The word itself is nothing. It's a thing we've made up. It's a construct that we use as a simple way of communicating an idea. That's all it is. How we choose to interpret that and how we choose to feel about it or express ourselves regarding it is perfectly up to us. And the real thing is, the best way to make a word unmeaning in terms of its any negative baggage or any emotion that you've had historically about it is to not give people the power to let them know that word, that you take it that way. You'll find very quickly the people using these types of words that are attempting to offend you will be very, very confused by the fact that you will not choose to take offense by the word, that you choose not to show any sense of anger about the particular word, that you choose not to evoke any physical violence or any sort of harm or any sort of negative criticism of them for the word, and they'll eventually stop using the word because they'll realize it has no power anymore. As long as you give it power, it's weaponized. Any word becomes powerful when someone decides to make it in such a way that someone decides that their hurt feelings is enough to get angry about it, and sometimes make particularly being violence about it. But if you don't let that happen, if you don't let those people know, or just choose not to take offense to it, or show any sort of actual emotion for it, or any sort of indication that this word bothers you, eventually they will stop using the word. Because the people that usually use words that intend to offend people do it only because they know they can offend you. They know that you have, and cooperatively, or group-wise have given that power of that word to become offensive to somebody, you or others. So the best way to get rid of offensive words, or to give lack of power, to remove the power from words that are considered society offensive, and maybe eventually cause those words to become underused or eventually not used at all, is to stop giving them power by actually showing a sort of emotional response to them. Simpler than done for most people. We spend most of our time letting our emotions be exposed when people use certain words that we've established in a certain group of society have a certain level of offense to either us or to a particular group that either we belong to or another group if we don't belong to that group as, quote, allies. That's another thing. Allies. People that don't exist as part of the group but are they're sympathetic. They're not empathetic. They can't be empathetic because you can't empathy unless you have a shared experience. But they're sympathetic to the cause of that particular group because they think that makes them heroes. That the group is going to say, "Hey, that's great. You are one of our allies. We love you," and that hopes to protect them from any sort of ire or any sort of resentment they may have towards the particular group of people that you may belong to, that typically, from their point of view, treat them this way or say these types of words to them. So this is an area that's we as humans really have to work on. It says understanding how words get power and how we can take the power of certain words and basically disarm just like a weapon. It's like diffusing a word. How to diffuse a word? Just like diffusing a bomb, except with a bomb, bombs kill people. Words only kill people if people choose to take actions in regards to the utterance of said words to them. Simple as that. The other thing I was talking about, I didn't talk about this time, but this I'm talking about what I originally was talking about. I was talking about survival versus happiness. I mean, how that scale is different for every person. Every person has a different degree of what they consider survival and consider happiness. And again, of course, the other thing I was talking about is how much does happiness cost? That was an idea I came up with a long time ago. The happiness cost. I mean, how many dollars a day do you have to have in your pocket? How much money do you have to have in your bank account? How many houses do you have? How can you, if you could quantify happiness for you and any particular person you know, a scale that you feel would be one that you consider happy, or anyone consider happy, any other person, what would it be? And I mean, does it really, in the end, make you that happy? If you really sat down and thought about it, does it really make you happy, actually? Okay, so I mean, anyway, so I got other things here that I wanted to talk about. The fact that a lot of this is all the simple thing of how transitional societies change over time. What things at one point in time may be not offensive to how they become offensive. How actions that were considered noble and just are all of a sudden considered patronizing. How having wealth for some groups of people may seem like a great thing, and how certain people groups are feeling completely vilified for anyone that has wealth, to the point where they form things like anarchist groups and they form like socialist groups. They feel everyone's looking for the answer to how to create a society where everyone is happy, but unfortunately, that's an impossible goal. There's never going to be a society where everyone is happy no matter what you do, no matter how you jig it. Whether you go socialist or capitalist or a combination of the two, it's been tried and tried and tried. All you can do is hope that you can get a large majority happy or relatively happy, or establish a point where they'll all be happy enough that even though they may not have all they want, they've gotten enough of what they got that they can live with it, that they can be happy with it, even though they may not be happy with it. And hope, a lot of times what they hope is that enough people are convinced that the things that they want that would make them happy, that enough people want them too. And the process of changing that paradigm in society, in terms of modern capitalist societies, in terms of democratic societies, is elections. Electing a member of parliament, or in this case, a senator or whatever elected body, who represents your particular values. And enough people agree that this person seems to represent enough of your values, and the collective group that they belong to, in this case, represents enough of your values, you vote for them, and that's the paradigm shift that changes how the society functions for everyone. So that's a consequence of, that's why society keeps changing, because as new people come in and born and die, the values change. People's expectations of what they want, what they think they need, the what they what things they expect life to be about, what things make them happy, happiness, the elusive happiness, um, things like simple things like getting a job, how that's changed from the time I was younger to the time I was older. Like when I grew up, at a time we were coming into the computer age, we were starting to have computers. Before that, people would have to write things on a typewriter, or they'd have to physically appear in person, or they'd have to write the letters by hand, or they had to write all these documents by hand. They had to do the work by hand. They had to look at the phone book. And before the phone book, they had to go, okay, how over time our technology has evolved and just changed the way that we as employees, which was most of us what we are, we're basically selling the one product that we know better than anything else ourselves, and how that whole has changed from the time of, like, say, my Uncle Wolfer, who just died recently. That was a sad time. He was a very nice man, very good man, very good family man. Had one daughter, unfortunately, because his wife's situation was unfortunate, but he had one daughter, had grandchildren. That daughter had children, and which made grandchildren. He was a very proud grandfather, and very proud of his family, loved his wife, and it just passed recently, and it's very sad. But he was a man of very much principle. He, like I said, he very much go-getter. He believed in that he had to work hard to keep people's job on, because he always wanted to be, he wanted to please his bosses, because he knew that would please them. He get paid a paycheck, and that was the sort of mutual satisfaction. I give myself to you, and you compensate me based on what you think I'm worth. It's a value that most society has lost in some degree, but the idea that working for value, and that ultimately working for your value in life, and then being willing to make yourself worthy of enough to be paid a compensation that's a numerable amount for what you do. So that's obviously a big thing about society we have to have. But anyway, he, like, in terms of his main job when he got to the school board, he wanted this job so bad. He literally sat on the doorstep with a lunch every day of the week for a whole week, when at the main office of the Board of Education, until one guy said, listen, I guess you're here, and the only way I'm going to get rid of you is to give you a job. And he did, and he stayed there and worked dutifully and went through. He was in the custodial thing, taking care of schools and that, and he dutifully did that job very cheerfully and went through the ranks of it until he retired from that position. And eventually he got his son-in-law into that thing through the fact that he had some clout there, been being there for a while. We don't see people do that anymore. People don't go to jobs and sit on the doorstep and wait for the employer to hire them. I mean, it would be ridiculous to do that in some respects when you think about it. But what about the idea of going to a place and saying, here, I got my resume, I see you have a job, you're dressed properly for the job, you don't overdress, just appropriate for the job itself, but just like you're actually employed that day, going there, well, listen, I'm ready to work now. How many people may actually get a job out of that? You know, what would be, it would be really funny if you went to a place like that and somebody really, it'd be the proof of test of an employer really wants to hire somebody. If they're claiming that they need someone right now, and they get all these resumes, and all those resumes don't really tell them much about these people as far as overall what their skill set is. It just says what the person says on it. They gotta weed them through and figure out which ones are lying, which ones are telling the truth, which ones they want to interview for, and which ones they don't. And that's a very hard choice. But if you had someone come to the door with a resume in hand and said, listen, I'm here, I'm willing to work right now, put me in coach, I want you to play. It's like the center field from John Cougar, John Ford, I can't remember which one of the Johns. Anyway, you can figure out which one, probably better than I do. I'm not always expert on everything. Anyway, so the idea is that you go in there and they may hire you just on the basis of giving you a chance because you actually showed up. You were ready to go, you proved that you really wanted to work, that you were desperate for the work, that you're eager to work, and so forth. Or even just as much as doing something like this, like I said to my son, Cece, that the one thing I would recommend do, unlike something I didn't do, is I didn't do the one thing I should do. On the back of the day, we had earlier computers, and we had word processors, and we had mail for sending resumes. Instead of my sending resumes to all these places, what I should have done is found a list of places I wanted to work. Did a little bit of research on these places, going through whatever, going to the library, learning whatever I can about this company, maybe making some phone calls, talking to people, find out what these companies are being, find out, first of all, will they be a place I want to work at to begin with, what type of things they do. In general, and then find out more specifics and find out all kinds of things about the company, what they're doing, research. Get as much information as you can. Find out who's in charge of what, who I should talk to about what, who's the hiring manager. Learn a bit about the history of the company. Learn as much about and then send the resume, and at least then you know that if you get called in there, you're ready to go. Or if you're really, really eager, you could go to the company and drop the resume off yourself and maybe ask to speak to the hiring manager because you've done your research, you know who that is. Maybe be surprised the fact you might actually get a job of it, because not too many people expect people to come in the door all dressed and ready to go with a resume in hand, asking for the hiring manager and know exactly who that person's name is. You might be surprised. You might find the results might be a lot better than you think, because of the fact of, like, some people like the idea that you took the time to do the work. And like I said, the whole paradigm be going from the mail to the internet to like sites like that. But the thing is, we used to do things on phone, but nobody does anything on phone. It's all text messages now. It's all internet. So all these changes on how we do things, not everything from looking for a job to looking for furniture to buying stuff. All the changes that we changed because of technology, and now the massive shift from the personal to the impersonal. How all these things become very impersonal, all because all the sake of efficiency, and all the sake of that they think it's better. Sometimes what may be efficient might not be effective. And that's the thing. Because it's more efficient doesn't mean it's more effective. Because the efficiency takes something away from the process that makes it unique. I mean, me sending my resume by text to printed things in an envelope to a bunch of employers with just a standard boilerplate wasn't really unique. But if I would have put there a cover letter, at least addressing the person I was wanting to talk to with a bunch of information about it in the cover that was personalized for that particular business, that would have made it a little bit more unique and maybe have had a better chance of getting past the door. Me taking the next step instead of going to that step, instead of just marrying a general layer, just pick a company I wanted to hire and walk in there with my resume and talk to the person. Find out when that person's in the office. Do some research ahead of time. Learn about that place. And then go to the place and want to talk to the person, especially if you know there's a position I'm running at the time. That might be more effective, because how many people are going to do that? How many companies are going to expect you? Sorry about that. How many companies are going to expect you to do that? So, these are all these paradigm shifts that are happening in the way life is going. Listen, I'm reading my notes here. I got lots of things on here. The idea that we went from not like in the case of like movies and entertainment, we went from having a limited amount of choices to having unlimited choices. Is there like too much? Do we have too much entertainment? Is there too much things to choose? Is there too many choices? Are those choices? Is having so many choices really good for us? Does that make us lazier in terms of like justifying sitting at the TV and watching hours and hours of whatever streamed on whatever service or whatever? Even if just us having a bunch of video tapes and we just sit there and play them, when we didn't have all these extra choices and have the video on demand. So the fact that we do all this stuff, are we moving away from doing other things in life? I mean, do we have too many things distracting us away from actually doing physical activities like we used to do? And of course, the pandemic made that very difficult. I mean, telling people that instead of doing physical, they wonder why people have all these problems with health and gaining weight. But if you take away their ability to have physical activity and force them to stay home, and the only thing you do is sit at the table or chair and watching a TV and eating junk food all day because they can't get any proper food because of this, and that's all they can do day after day after day, and this is it, and tell them this is all they can have, and all of a sudden then wondering why there's an obesity epidemic. It's like, I don't know, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, isn't it? It absolutely is a crazy, crazy world. At the end of the day, all this stuff, no matter what I talk about all the observations I have about everything, ultimately the one thing it all comes down to is one simple thing: personal responsibility. We have a personal responsibility to take matters in hand for our own welfare. We have personal responsibility to be reticent of our family or the loved ones in our close life, to sort of give them on the right track and give them some sort of guidance. We have a responsibility to our community to give a certain amount of contribution to it to make it a better place. We have a certain responsibility to our province, our country, our world. But it all starts with you. And it starts with us. So anytime you complain about something going wrong in life that you don't like, Start saying to yourself, what am I doing to make this better? And worse still, what am I doing to contribute to the problem itself? How am I a part of the problem? And look at the way the problem's being solved now and say, do you really think this is solving the problem? And if you don't think it's solving the problem, or if you do think it's solving the problem, find it for yourself, get the facts, and find exactly how whatever is being done now, what it's really doing. Is it solving the problem, or is it just passing the problem down to the buck? And then otherwise, we're going to end up with a world with a lot of Greta Thunbergs going, how dare you? And then the fact is, they really don't know what's really going on. All they know is what they're being told by the people that are involved, helping her get her message out, helping to influence her, and in this case could be, I believe, potentially manipulating this poor young girl into believing that she is a part of this youth indignation movement, selling some shade at the world, what's going on, who doesn't really know as much as she thinks she knows. And the problem is, it's not what she knows about things. It's not what we know about things. It's the ignorance of what we don't know. Before you get mad about something, get the facts about what it is you're getting mad about so you know who to be mad at. And come to the table with some solutions. Some really thought out, tangible solutions. This is what all this is about. Like I said, happiness is not just about money. It's about state of mind. It's about the state of our planet. It's about the state of humanity. But it only starts, you can only work, the only place you have to start everything is to work on your own personal happiness, and then you can look at the bigger picture of how that happiness and how what sacrifices you need to make for that happiness, what sacrifices others have to make for that happiness, and how you can find a way to be happy without affecting others in a way that makes them unhappy. A very, very difficult balancing act, indeed, I know. Anyway, that's enough for me now. Like I said, I haven't even covered half of this. I'm sorry, covering little Cole's notes of this thing on here. I'm just had a bunch of ideas wrote down that I haven't really gone too much. The sheet's right there. I mean, if you can read it there, it's just, it's my handwriting. I wrote on a board one day. I get a little night. I end up writing things down like I have a whiteboard upstairs, and I write all kinds of ideas down in my scribbled handwriting. All these ideas, squaring them down, trying to organize them, trying to write them down so that I can remember the next day, because I've got the worst short-term memory in the planet. Hence why, when I'm doing this, if I repeat myself during this thing about certain points, I apologize. That's me. It's my short-term memory, not the sort of downside of not having some sort of planned out script or sort of planned out agenda. Anyway, I noticed I've been going for almost 30 minutes. I appreciate those who have stuck on this time to listen to me. I'm probably going to start looking at doing a content which I call my Loonies Were Shorts, or I might be spun off to what I call Our Wise Winsome, where I'll talk about some things more in general without going into a lot of details, and leave the discussion to you to come back to me about what you think about it. So anything that I've been talking about, there's anything else you think I should be talking about, please leave me a comment on my thing there. Like I say, comment, subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, you can send any support you want to info@intimemedia.ca. That's info@intimemedia.ca, and I will get it. And then if it's whatever you want to do to help this channel, because it's a self-financed channel. I'm on YouTube. I'm not currently monetized because the rules for YouTube are that you have to have a number of subscribers before you get to be monetized. These are rules that changed a long time ago as more and more careers gone. I was on at one point earlier on, but I wasn't fully embraced in doing this until very much in the last couple of years. And in the meantime, the policies for YouTube changed. Well, I do not get monetized for this. I don't make a dime of this. I do this more or less as a public service. So if you want me to make this my full-time job and maybe to expand on this more and bring you more content on a regular basis where I can do this and make a living on this, given the fact that I would love to do this. I would love to be able to come on here and eventually have discussions with people and talk about things like this and maybe some commentary and make this a regular thing, make this part of a regular part of my life where I can be here talking about what my things are about. I just hoping that in my small way I can make a contribution to make this a better world before I go. For my children, my grandchildren, and my children's children, and my family, and my friends, and all the people that really matter. because I can see the way the world's working right now, and I think these are things that we need to talk about more. And the more that we talk about them, the more we discuss them, it's what the old saying is, that sunlight is the best disinfectant for things going wrong, and that's the best way. It's talking about not holding on to it and just hiding onto it. So like, comment, subscribe. I'm Mike, and this is my Toon Loose Worth for the June 20, I think it's 20, what day, 24th edition, I believe it is. What day is the 23rd, sorry. Tomorrow's the 24th. 23rd edition of Toon Loose on Sunday. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.